Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Southern Reads Podcast, the show where I talk about books and only books and everything book related. Today, I am joined by Mr. Russell Anders. At just the age of 4, Russell started telling stories, often interrupting his mom during bedtime reading to ask, "Then what happened?" And she would also always answer, "You tell me." And his imagination conjured fantastical tales of dragons and dinosaurs. Storytelling remained a part of his life as he grew through his early work scribbled in Mead notebooks during study halls, swung between self-insert wish fulfillment and imitative fan fiction. It helped him develop a lifelong writing habit that included not only writing but passionately studying the craft of writing. Despite all the reading classes and practice, Russell struggled to find his voice, one not only his own, but one capable of effectively telling a story. While he continued to cultivate this, however, he found a sharpening sense of narrative that first manifested as a deeply critical eye toward modern entertainment. Too many times friends cut into his post movie describes with, "Can you ever just watch a movie?" So today he's here. He has come out with a book that he will be sharing with us today. He's just going to tell us a lot about his writing journey and kind of how he got into writing and telling a lot about his backstory. So, Russell, thank you so much for taking time to come on the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to hearing your story and hearing just kind of your really successful career as a author. So, welcome to Southern Reads.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, you have really started writing at a very young age, and you actually had this kind of excitement and intriguement about wanting to write. Uh, when you first started out learning more about books and writing, what was kind of going through your mind about was did you want to do this as like a full-time career, or did you think this would just be like a really good hobby that you would have for a long time?
I I was really into it really young, and I think I started to harbor some thoughts about being a full-time author probably somewhere around high school. Up until that point, I was locked into the family legacy. Grandpa was a doctor, dad was a doctor, so obviously I was going to be a doctor. And I discovered that though I could do it, it medicine wasn't interesting to me, and in a big way because it was becoming more of a business than it was a practice of healing, which I find ironic now that I'm writing about cyberpunk and the financialization of everything. So it's a trend that has stayed with me. But I found that when I thought about what else I might do, I realized that this was something that I had been doing for already a decade, and I just loved it. I could not wait to get some free time so I could tell a story somehow, either write it down. I was really big into tabletop role playing games. So and the storytelling element of that was a huge thing. So it was something I wanted to do for a really long time and really settled into as a teenager. The one thing that I found shifted for me when I got really serious about it and did publish was that I would love to do this full time, but I do not ever want to be in a position where I am reliant on writing in order to pay my bills. Because at that point, I'm not writing to create anything, I'm writing to make profit. And that becomes product. And I think that it would hurt the creative process.
So, do you remember kind of the first book or the first kind of little thing that you wrote?
Uh, I remember the first thing that I wrote that got any kind of attention that had people suggesting to me that this was something I could do. It was actually two pieces I wrote in sixth grade. One was a story about a gumball that got lost from the dispenser and had wild adventures. And the other was a story about a Viking or a samurai, sorry, who washed up in Viking lands and had a conflict with a local tribe. And in both cases, the teacher had scribbled a note at the end saying, "You you have a way about this. You should look into this more."
So, where do you normally get your ideas from your when you started out writing? Where did you get your ideas?
In the beginning, I think I started with the same thing a lot of people did, which was I wrote what I liked. So I read the Dragonlance Chronicles and Legends, and I really liked sword and sorcery. So I made my own world with magic and dragons and whatnot. But when I started to get a little bit more serious about it, I wound up quite unknowingly adopting a method that the Scottish author Warren Ellis detailed really well in an interview. And the way he described it is um, he binges on media, books, TV, news, comic books, whatever, and he just dumps it all into the subconscious. And it just sits there and it swirls together, and a couple of disparate things will create a link and bubble up to the surface as an idea seed. It's not enough, at least I personally find, it's not enough to make a whole book out of, but it's a good starting point. And that's what I really like to do now. I find that if I write about something in the real world without directly writing about it, it provides me a certain sense of sometimes urgency, sometimes catharsis, but it's grounded in something that's real, and that prevents it from being so abstract and out there that it becomes harder for the reader to relate to it.
Now, going through, when you first start out writing, you're really introduced to so many different genres and different ways of writing. Was there a particular one that kind of stood out to you of like, okay, that's kind of what I would want to focus on writing, or did you just kind of dabble in different genres to see where your creativeness shined the most?
I was all about fantasy of various stripes when I was young. I was a really good student and a very poor athlete. So the idea of the wizard, the guy who could become more powerful than the warriors by studying, was really appealing to me. Um, and so I went really deep on that for a good decade. That was my genre. Inside of that, I think that Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, who wrote the aforementioned Dragonlance saga, really appealed to me because not only did they hit the fantasy tropes very effectively, but their character development was extremely vivid. I fell in love with these characters. I thought about them when I wasn't reading them as a preteen. And that was something even then I knew that I wanted to do. I wasn't solely fixated on plot. I wanted to create story people that would have emotional resonance with the readers. And that was a very early influence in developing beyond just write some stuff that happens.
Yeah, you kind of really related to you as like good student but really bad athlete. That fit me and fit, I was like, yeah, that describes me to a T right there. Yep. I was that was just my whole um persona growing up. But yeah, what I like about fantasy too, it's like you can have very eye-opening, you can do really whatever you want to with fantasy. There's no limit. That's what I really like about it. Now, was there a genre that you are would never write in, or was like that? I just don't really feel like I would be a good fit for this genre.
Romance, I think, and no hate to romance. It's just that I don't think that my style, my story sensibilities would go with that very well. Something that I didn't know was happening was there's a term that a bunch of my friends use to just that they have decided I have my own genre, and they call it Russell Dark. Instead of grim dark, it's Russell Dark, and it's I will be a straight up horrendous person to my characters. I put them through the meat grinder. because I have this personal feeling that victory only means something if it's really hard won. And I really lean into the idea that conflict makes the story. So I have really bad things happen to these characters so that if they come out on top at the end, it really means something. And I think it's too mean for something like romance. I don't do happy really well. I do victory, right? It's not all doom and gloom, but it's not happy. So I think that something like romance is probably just a bad fit for me. That said, I have read books on writing romance because the way that romance authors make use of sensory detail that's beyond sight and sound is actually really good, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about that.
For me, the topic I really or genre I tend to gravitate towards most is young adult. So for the books that I've covered on the podcast so far, and books that will be coming out soon, all have kind of that young adult tag to it. Not not because, and mainly it's because I kind of fit in that age demographic. I'm kind of in that age where I can relate to all of these characters and I can actually relate to a lot about what they're saying. So, I sign up for those kinds of books because I can relate to it. Now, I do venture outside of young adult and I'll do fiction or maybe a mystery novel from here and there, but um I do kind of a mixture of all the books together or genres together, but they have to have that kind of uh young adult aspect in there.
You know, I think young adult is a lot more broad than people who don't read it give it credit for. It's not kitty lit. It's just um, it is young adult. And I have a friend of mine who actually teaches junior high, and he teaches English, and we talk about his reading list sometimes, and it's got some really mature stuff in there, even though it's all young adults.
Yeah, that is one I think the topic when it comes to young adult is, what age range and who's it most reliable for. Um I try to give like an example from the books I have listed on my desk right currently, but currently that's not a good selection. Um we'll just do like Hunger Games for an example. Hunger Games is considered young adult. It's considered to be in that age demographic, but it's very, I would say, mild when it comes to words. Actually, I don't even think there's been a curse word in it so far. If my memories remind me, there's not really any cursing. There's some violence in there or whatnot. Obviously, with it being the Hunger Games and dealing with death, I think that's one of the huge things. But then something like One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. I had to look at the name. Um, her book is considered young adult, but it has language in it, uh, some steamy stuff in there. So, it there's always kind of like that balance of like, well, how is this considered young adult and this considered young adult when they're both totally different when it comes to writing styles? I see young adult being like 18 years to 24, so college years. Some, and well, I'd put high school in there too, but some count middle school as young adult. No, I
It's like a whole
I
different
personally
world.
wouldn't. Yeah, that fits more into like the teens, young teens genre. I don't know
Hmm.
what that genre would be. I think it's actually called teens, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I personally think that it would no. But needless to say, everyone can have a different opinion. But yeah, some of these young adult novels I've read, I'm like, ooh, this is kind of pushing it a little bit. But
Yeah, and I think that as young adult becomes also more popular amongst the mainstream, I think that that ambiguity is only going to grow because I know plenty of adults who have kids of their own who pretty much only read young adult.
Now, do you think when it comes to young adult, do you think that there is kind of a limit or kind of a restriction some at times when people can't really be their full creative nature, like they can't really tell the story like it is due to kind of the restriction and the age range of how some of the books are written?
I think so. I think we need to define what young adult is in this case, right? Because we've established a really broad sweep, and what is appropriate for a 24-year-old is going to be worlds different from what's appropriate for a 14-year-old. So if we
Right.
take your definition of, say, like 18 to 24,
Hmm.
no, I don't think so. I think by that age, you are a young adult. You don't, I mean, I remember when I was 24, man, I thought I had the world figured out and all that kind of stuff. And then I spent the next several years learning how much I did not know. Um,
Right.
but I didn't feel like I was of an age where adult media was going to uh, in some way negatively impact me, right? Like I could watch, violent films and if I read something that's soaked in profanity, it's a matter of taste rather than giving me bad habits, in terms of how I talk or something. By 24, I was set enough that I could make those determinations on my own and I didn't have to worry about the effect it was going to have. So while I don't think that certain levels of violence or profanity or steamy content or anything is going to necessarily be appropriate for everybody in the 18 to 24 range. I think that you have enough maturity in that upper range that that becomes more of a matter of taste. And just like putting out a novel for, mainstream adults, there are going to be people who just do not respond well to it, but that's a matter of personal choice and people can simply opt out of those books.
Yeah, I agree with that too, because there have been some books that I'm like, this is pretty graphic when it comes to how it's perceived. But then there have been other books where I'm like, they classified as like young adult, and I'm like, this is the most PG thing I've read so far. So it gets difficult with young adult. Young adult's a really difficult topic. And for me, I would say a genre to really write for because you want to fit the right demographic. But then at the end of the day, you can't really control what someone reads. I mean, you can to a certain point, but there then becomes like a moment in time when you don't have any control over what they read because they
Yeah.
could slip away, they could steal it from one of their buddies' house, or they go to the bookstore and read it there. It's hard to kind of shield people from or kids from these books too. So I mean, um, it just really, really depends, honestly, and I think that's what we're me and Russ are getting at. It's an interesting genre um to see how far some of the authors are willing to go. Um, like here's a prime example. I was reaching out to an author for an interview, and they weren't available to do an interview, but her publicist or someone that works for her gave me some more recommendations for people that would be open to do interview, and they sent me kind of like a PDF version of the book, just kind of as like a press release thing. And I was curious of like looking to see like how bad the language was in it. One book had none at all. There was not a single curse word in there at all. And in the next one I looked at, it was just like profanity after profanity after profanity. And I thought, and they were both classified as, I would say, young adult, maybe fiction to a point, but I think young adult could have benefited it. It was just a different view of like this. See, this is what I'm saying about young adult. Some people are really bold and risky about it, and some are real laid back and are real conservative about it. So it just really, really depends. Now, kind of going forward a little bit, through your years, you kind of wrote different you wrote a lot about fantasy and had really started working and writing more. What was the moment, or what was an exact moment for you that you wanted to be a published author?
So when I was in high school, a couple of my fellow dedicated non-athletes and I got together and formed a writers club. We were the Uncensored Scribes, and the local newspaper visited us during one of our very early meetings. The paper was starting this column in which they would publish short works by um, local high schoolers. And so they came by to ask us for submissions. Um, I mean, it was a spur of the moment thing, so I happened to have something on me. And so I gave it to them, but I didn't think anything of it. Lo and behold, that was the very first piece that they picked to publish. And I still have that newspaper clipping up on my wall downstairs. And seeing myself in print, it wasn't just a thrill. It gave me the idea that this could actually happen. It's not just a dream. Like I mean, it was a local paper. I didn't get paid for it or anything, but I was in print and I really liked it. I said, maybe I could do more of this. For a while, I was trying to get short stories into print. Um, and it just turns out that that's not great for me. I do better in long form. I like to dive into uh, stories and have characters develop over time. And it's really hard to do with short stories. But I never forgot that. And I started to seriously look into the feasibility of doing this. And the first thing I decided was, okay, well, I'm going to write a book then. And so began my epic fantasy quest to get that done. And it was weird. I had all of the confidence in the world. All I needed to do was finish it. And then, of course, somebody was going to pick it up.
Have you ever thought about venturing into novellas to kind of be able to expand on the short stories a little bit more?
I have. So for me, the ultimately settling on the genre that I did, cyberpunk, came about because I needed to enforce some discipline in terms of my word count. And having cyberpunk is often follows the same structure that a heist film does or a heist story, and that structure gave me a container, right? I can write the story. It's got to fit in here. Whereas fantasy had endless amounts of world building and traveling all over the place and big set pieces and all this kind of stuff, which is why when I was done with that book, it was 600,000 words. Nobody was going to touch that. It was entirely too large. So the next book, the one that actually got published, I got that one down to 100,000 words. And um, the one that I'm working on now, I have a draft. It's 120,000 words. Now I'm hoping I can axe about 20,000 words out of that and get something that's about 100,000. It's a decent size, a little big, but not too much. But the idea of a novella, it just strikes me personally as really hard because I don't know how to shut up when I start getting on the page. And keeping it to 20 to 30,000 words, I would just be getting started.
Well, I don't think anything could be longer than Game of Thrones, and I will leave it at that. I I tried reading it. It's not for me. Well, there's such a funny story behind it. So when I lived with my roommates at the time, and I don't think I've told this story on the podcast so far. My roommates were huge Game of Thrones fans, the TV version, not the book version. And so someone in one of their families gave them a copy of the book, and they didn't want anything to do it. Well, I had come home from class one day, and I just happened to look on the table and saw that it was a Game of Thrones book. And I thought, oh, well, and I think this was after the holiday break. So I thought, oh, they got this for Christmas or something. I thought it was like a fan book. I thought that it would be like one of those fan nonfiction guides about behind the scenes stuff about the show, how they made it, kind of kind of a lot more of those that kind of book. I didn't think it was actually the novel from the original author. And so a few days go by, and then they just one of them gives it to me, and they're like, "Well, we know your birthday was coming up, and we know you like reading." And I was just like, "Oh, I totally saw that before then." So I actually had given up a surprise that they were going to give to me when it wasn't even my fault. It was their fault for leaving it on the table. So I was like, "Oh, well, I actually already saw this, but thank you." I tried reading it. They didn't think I'd even pick up the book, but I thought, it'd be rude of me not to read it. I read about 200 pages, I think, and that might be even a stretch to say, but I think I read about 150 or 200 pages in it, and I thought, I can't read it. It makes no sense to me. By the time I got through um one section, it was only just one part of the first episode. I thought, and how long is this series? I put the series aside and I thought, nope, it's not for me. So it was the only book I've not finished. I've finished mostly all my other books. Thought there was a loud boom of thunder, but my cat jumped off the bed. There's just a lot going on. Um, so I was very much I was like, no, this is it's not for me. Um, do you have you ever had something like that happen where you get to writing and you're writing a lot and then you go back and read it and you're like, what did I just write?
Oh, all the time. One of the biggest lessons I had to learn about writing was that getting good didn't mean writing a first draft that is also a final draft. I thought that eventually I would get good enough that I just write it one time and it'd be great. That's never going to happen. Uh, One of the best things that I did for myself was um, funny enough, actually came from Dan Brown, the author Dan Brown. I had an experience with him very similar to your Game of Thrones story. I had a friend of mine who read the Da Vinci Code and loved it and wanted me to read it and knew that if he said that I should, I wouldn't because it wasn't my normal kind of thing. So he bought it for me because now I feel obligated because he spent money. So now I'm going to read it. Um, and like you, like I finished it, but I didn't think it was anything great like he did. But Dan Brown did give a class once that I watched, and he had a maxim in there that I have hung on to ever since. And he apparently got it from Aerosmith, which is give yourself permission to suck. When you're first starting with a creative endeavor, it's going to be rough and there's going to be all kinds of things that just don't work. Doesn't matter. You still have to do that first iteration and then you can improve it. So just about every day when I'm writing a first draft, I will have to talk to myself as I'm doing it. It's like, it's terrible. It doesn't matter. Just put it on the page. I'll fix it later. It's awful. It's awful. And a lot of times when I go back to it, it's rough, but it's not as bad as it felt like it was when I was in the middle of it, but it's still nothing I would want to share with anybody else.
Yeah, and that was kind of a rule that I had made myself too, was kind of how you were, someone wanted you to read it and then they buy it for you and you hate not to read it.
Yes.
That's how I felt in that moment because I thought they gave it to me as a gift. I just don't want it to be sitting here and not read it. So, I after that I went by a thing that said unless I give you like a recommendation of like get me this, do not buy me a random book because I don't want to hurt your feelings on potentially not finishing it, but also if I finish it not liking it and then you get it, your feelings hurt that I didn't like it. I've told my friends that I said just don't randomly gift me anything, any books unless I tell you like, oh, this is what I want for as a gift. Do not get it because I don't want that thing of having to like hurt your feelings or whatnot. So I've
That's a
had that
great rule.
rule. No one's done it so far. I'm just like, you wait until I say so, and then that's your golden rule and your only ticket to where you can give me a book is if I request it. So um we've it's worked out so far. So I'll run the up and up from here. Well, all this has kind of led to you finally coming out with your debut novel. How did it feel having a book finally published for the first time?
It was surreal. Um, I I had wanted this for decades. I had been working at it. I had been just trying to become a better writer, and then all of a sudden, and it had started to feel after a while like it wasn't going to happen. Maybe I'm just not good enough. And then it did. And it was an amazing experience because it had a number of major milestones along the way, and every single one of them was thrilling. When I first saw the cover, when I finished the edits that my editor had for the manuscript and submitted it back to the publisher, and I got the email saying, "Yeah, we're good to go." I was like, "This is actually going to happen." Every step along the way was a dream come true. It was a phenomenal experience. I had a hard time accepting it for a while because I had been working for this for so long that I had no idea how to actually sit back and enjoy it. I had just become so accustomed to working towards it that I had no idea what to do when I had it. But that was a great problem to have. So no complaints.
And the book that you've come out with has been a really good book. Everyone has really liked it. You've gotten a lot of publicity for it. The Demonis Ex Machina. Tell me a little bit about kind of the background behind this book and kind of share this with my audience, just what the book is about in general.
Sure. So like I mentioned before, I had opted to go with a cyberpunk story to completely palate cleanse from the decade I had spent writing this monstrosity of fantasy. Um, but there was something about cyberpunk that wasn't quite sitting with me. I enjoy cyberpunk. Neuromancer is one of my favorite books. Um, but for me, I think it was because I spent so much time in fantasy. Cyberpunk is fundamentally a nihilistic genre. It is a dystopian world filled with characters who look at the world and say, it's terrible. Let's just see what we can do to survive in it. And there's rarely heroism in it. It's a heist usually. It's people trying to pull off something and they're going to get theirs in this world that's terrible. I still ultimately like heroic ideals. And so I wanted to have heroism in my book. It was still going to be cynical and dystopian, but at the end of the day, I wanted people who were making the hard choice to do the right thing. And so that was the one of the differentiators for me in writing this, that it wasn't just going to be, some cyber heist. This was going to be about people making a principled stand. And what grew out of that was this idea of including magic. And the reason was magic as a theme is something that stands in diametric opposition to the technocracy of cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is very steeped in runaway capitalism, either late stage capitalism, corporatism, whatever you want to call it. Corporations rule the world, they eclipse world governments in terms of power, and money is the engine that makes the world go around, and you don't have any. It's held by a very small few. Um, and everything has been commodified, financialized, reproduced at scale, that kind of thing. Magic resists that. You can't mass produce. So, for example, in Demonis Ex Machina, the magic is Faustian bargains. The three main characters make a deal with the devil, literally, and they get magic powers for it. You can't batch print infernal contracts. There is no just setting that up for, everyone in the department to just have that. You can't do that in a faceless mass produced system. It has to be you sit down with the devil one on one and you negotiate for your soul. And every single one of these arrangements is individual. It treats you, ironically, like a person, even though this is a malign force, but they are acknowledging your individuality in a way that society is trying to strip away. And that ultimately became the core of what I wrote. I wanted to write about humans trying to stay human in a world that wanted to reduce them to resources.
And I really do like that you kind of bring this to the centerfold when it comes to your to the subgenre. You know, there's this thing about cyberpunk, but then you've kind of found it as like soul punk, and it contains all the same trappings and tropes that cyberpunk has. Is this kind of a genre where a lot of people are not fully aware of what it is, or may not be too fully aware about what the genre is?
I would imagine so because I made it up. So it's pretty new, and the catalog is kind of thin right now. But I'm doing my best to pad that out. Um, yeah, I didn't set out to start a whole new genre. I was just going to write my own version of cyberpunk. But later, when I was talking to a friend of mine who is in marketing professionally and had done me the solid of reading my book, uh, he pointed out that it is substantially different in some ways. And not only is that, a marketable angle, but it's worth calling out because somebody who really wants that hard sci-fi kind of grim nihilistic edge to it is going to be unhappy. So calling it cyberpunk is technically true, but a little disingenuous, and it would serve people to call it what it is, which is its own thing. That way, the people who want that kind of stuff can find it, and the people who want to stay away from it don't have your Game of Thrones experience.
So far, what have been kind of the reviews and the critical response that you've received so far from your debut?
I have been so grateful for everybody who has read and then took some time to leave a review. And what one of the most gratifying things about it has been people who I don't know, have never spoken to, have no idea what they look like, are telling me that they get out of the book the things that I wanted to convey. And that is so that feels so good that they had the experience I was trying to engender. A lot of what resonates with people, it tends to be two things. One is the setting. There's a lot of talk about it being a cyberpunk setting, but one that feels a little bit more grounded. People often say they can imagine the world of the book existing in the real world in about 20 or 30 years, which is great. That's one of the things that I wanted to do. I based my world not on fanciful tech, but just taking where we are now and pushing it down a particular timeline. The other thing was that the characters and their moral quandaries really resonated with people. These were characters who were sometimes doing bad things knowingly, because they were in desperate situations. They were trying to be decent human beings, and they didn't always succeed. And the fact that they struggled with this made them feel real to a lot of the readers who took the time to leave a review. And I really, really wanted that. As much as I worked on the plot, I really, like I said before, I wanted to write characters that people would think about after they closed the book.
Going forward, is this something that since hearing all the good reviews that you have received, does this kind of make you want to produce more, or um, where would you like to see your writing career going forward?
I would love to do more of this. And I feel like not only just write novels, though I would, of course, be doing that, but I would love to dive deeper into this new genre, soulpunk. I feel very at home here. It scratches my heroic fantasy sensibilities, but now as an adult, see, like as a young adult, I was much more idealistic. Now I feel like that needs to be tempered with reality and whatnot. I'm not a pessimist, but I'm not Pollyanna like I used to be. So this lets me hit that striving for heroism, but put it in a put it in a setting and a milieu that allows me to talk about this world in aspects of it that I just feel like something needs to be said. So it's a particular blend. It's definitely for me, but I hope that it finds an audience looking for something that straddles that divide that hasn't been before. So I would love to. I'm not going to write an endless series. I don't like doing that because I feel like after a certain point you can't endanger the characters. Um, and if you can't endanger the characters, for me anyway, it becomes much more difficult to raise the stakes. So I tend to write one-offs, but I would love to continue to explore what soul punk could be.
Yeah, running for series is difficult to kind of keep sustainability throughout the whole series and have it be like a good novel. It's hard. It can be done. Obviously, some all the series I've read so far have been so good at doing that, and then I'm pretty sure there is a series out there that is just not as good as the first book was. It's hard to write for a series, but I do very much like standalones as they are. Um, I gotta also um say that I was looking at your website earlier and saw that you were a huge dog person. That kind of they do they have any kind of inspiration on your writing, either when it comes to characteristics, personality, character names, or just general plots surrounding the characters?
So I have never put one of my dogs into a book. Um, I am a huge dog person, and I am a person who loves huge dogs. They are they weigh more than me, um, but they are a part of my writing process because they will usually be with me when I write. In fact, I have a little note in the back of my of Demonis Ex Machina. Um, One of my dogs had passed away in between me finishing the draft and publishing it, and he had been with me the entire time. So he was a part of it, even though he wasn't in it. I think the big influence on with dogs with me is it really had this little maxim from Stephen King land for me hard. He was in an interview. This might have been talking about the oh, now I'm drawing a blank on the book title, but it was the one where somebody gets hit by a car and develops precognition, and he finds out that the person running for president is going to destroy the world. Um, he says in an interview talking about that book that he needed to establish this very charming man as the villain, but he wasn't going to show it to anybody. So the first thing that you see this guy do is kick a dog. And he said, if you want to establish that somebody is a bad dude, you have them be mean to an animal. And I love animals, and they tend to love me. I have yet to meet a dog I don't get along with. And so if I really want a character to be fully detestable, he will probably not like, I will put a dog in there to establish that this person is good. Whoever owns that dog is probably a good dude. Anyone who doesn't like that dog or is mean to it, bad person. Because I know how I would respond if I saw somebody kick a dog.
Mm. Oh yeah, I 100% agree. I was trying to think, part of the when you were talking about it reminded me of one thing, but then when I thought about the movie, I was like, I don't really. Are you talking about Pet Cemetery?
No, though that one was good. No, this was before it. The movie actually had um, Martin Sheen in it, so it's an older one.
Hmm. I'm not. I can't think. I can't think of what it is right now. Because when you were saying like, oh, someone gets hit by a car, I was like, oh, Pet Cemetery, that 100%. And then when you said they run for president, I thought, wait a minute, back
Th- th-
up.
This guy
Well,
survives getting hit by the car. It's the trauma to the brain is somehow activates his ability to see the future.
gotcha. Okay. Is it? Oh, wait. Is it Maximum Overdrive?
No, that one was one where cars come to life. It's a
Okay.
really
Well,
weird short story.
we'll just. I'll just stop on trying to guess because it's not working out for me in the moment. But uh, yeah, it's I 100% agree with you on this too when it comes to dogs too, because I have had this personal thing when it comes to movies as well. And I don't know if you are the same way, but I feel like in a movie, if the dog dies or a cat dies or something, that me I've always had that thing of the director hates animals. I don't that's just a weird mindset I've had, but I feel like either the writer or the director had a hatred of animals, so they just had the animal die in it. I've had that philosophy ever since I was younger, and I still go by it. So
I think you're right. By the way,
I
the Dead Zone. That's the one I was thinking of.
the dead zone, gotcha. Okay. Oh yeah, I feel like I've heard of that.
It's an older one, both movie and book.
I'll have to look that up. But yeah, that's what I've always thought about animals. I'm like, if a director kills them, they hated them. Try to prove me wrong, try to change my mindset, but
It's true. You'll very rarely find something like that happen. I remember in Independence Day, the big thing was, there was the explosion in the subway tunnels, and people are getting roasted as this wave of fire comes through, but the dog makes it through the door.
maybe my mindset on that one's not too far off. It kills me. I'm just like, no, was that necessary? I really have told people this about movies and books too. I don't get teary-eyed a lot when there's like a human emotion that happens. Like I've read some books where um the character commits suicide or they die from a really bad illness or whatnot, and I don't really feel anything from it. But yet, if I'm reading and there's like a thing and said the dog broke its toenail, I'm like, I break down, and people are like, "Okay, we're gonna call sight word on you." That's just how I am. I've just been like that. I've never had that like emotional attachment when it comes to like human intimate moments like that and emotional moments like that. But if makes a dog in there, oh, I'm gone. I'm like, don't talk to me for the rest of the day. But so to anyone listening, if what's been the biggest piece of advice that you've learned that you would give to someone else to help them be able to go into the writing business and publishing business smoothly that you wish you had known about when you first started?
Sure. I think the one of the most important things in the beginning to keep in mind is there there's an enormous amount of information out there on how to write, on all kinds of various aspects of it, right? How to write scintillating dialogue, how to develop a pulse pounding plot, all that stuff, right down to what your routine should look like. Understand that all of it is potentially valid, but writing is at least as much art as it is science, and therefore it is highly subjective. I didn't waste, I spent a lot of time trying to write like Stephen King because Stephen King is a very successful author. So I figured he's doing something right. I should do it like him. Well, Stephen King is a pantser. He believes that planning ahead of time is the death of creativity. So he sits down with a blank page and he just writes with no idea what's going to happen. It's just going to flow out of him. And he doesn't stop until he's got 5 pages done for the day. Well, I tried doing that. That's how I wound up with 600,000 words because my book over the place because I had no idea where it was going, and neither
Right.
did the book. What I needed to learn was that that works for some people, but it didn't work for me. I work better from an outline. If I break things down and have a plan, then it doesn't actually stifle my creativity, but it does help me get to the point a whole lot faster. So just because there's a successful author out there or a really authoritative sounding book, it doesn't mean that the advice is going to work for you. And if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't mean that you're not good. It just means that that particular thing isn't to your style. So try things out, right? You're never going to know whether it works or not until you try it. But don't be afraid to walk away from something after you've given it an honest go and just decide that that's not for you. You're going to try a different way. I promise you, you don't have to come up with anything on your own. There's a million and one different ways to do things, and they have all been cataloged.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, and uh, I appreciate you for sharing that. Well, Russell, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come on the podcast today to share your books and share your writing career and just really be able to have a really good open conversation about your writing journeys. For people interested in the books, if they would like to check them out and would like to learn more about what you have coming up, where can they go to learn more information and where can they get to follow you as well?
Sure. So the book is Demonis Ex Machina. It is available anywhere that you would buy books. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Google. The audiobook actually just came out yesterday, which is available across all audiobook platforms. So of course Audible, but also Spotify, Google Books, Apple. Uh, so if you're looking for the actual book, it is out there to be found anywhere you're going to look at books. For me specifically, I'm on social media, Russell Anders on Facebook, Russell Anders Author on Instagram, and my website, which is probably the best place to find more information about me, what's coming up, that kind of thing. Um, and that is russellandersbooks.com.
And I will put all this information down in the description box below. So feel free to just check the show notes to find hit all of his links to all of his books that have come out. Um, Feel free to also check me out on the socials. You can check me out on Instagram and TikTok at southern.reads. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcast. And as always, feel free to check the website out, noahspodcasts.com, to learn more about this show as well as the other shows and podcasts that I do. Feel free to subscribe to this podcast so you get notified of when new episodes come out in the future. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in today's episode. Hope you all enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day. Be safe, and I will catch you in the next episode of Southern Reads.